My name is Elaine. I am 52 years old, and last Sunday, my only son Brandon pushed me into a swimming pool in front of our entire family. It was supposed to be a happy day, a barbecue at my sister Diane's house. I was wearing a new pale blue linen dress. I felt good, settled for the first time in years. But Brandon has a way of turning light into shadow. He thought it was a joke. I saw him look at me with that glint in his eye, the one he used to get as a boy right before he'd knock over his juice box. I should have moved, but I froze. The shock of the cold water was nothing compared to the sound of everyone laughing with him laughing loudest of all. An hour later, when the laughter had long died, I made sure he wasn't laughing anymore. Before I share exactly what happened in that quiet hour, I'd love to know where you're listening from today. If you're in a place where you've ever felt small in a crowd of people who are supposed to love you, type "me too" in the comments below. And if you want to hear how a moment of humiliation can turn into a lesson in strength, please hit that subscribe button and ring the bell. This story isn't about revenge. It's about resetting the scales of respect. Let me tell you about Brandon. I raised him alone after his father decided fatherhood was more of a suggestion than a commitment. I worked 2 jobs as a secretary during the day and a bookstore clerk on weekends so he could have the baseball cleats, the science camp, the college fund. He was my whole world. When he got into a great tech school, I cried for a week. I was so proud. And when he landed his first big Silicon Valley job, I thought all the struggle had been worth it. I really did. But success changed him. Not all at once. It was a slow drip, like a faucet with a bad washer. He started calling me Elaine. Instead of mom said it sounded more peer-to-peer. He'd visit my cozy little house and talk about square footage and appreciation potential with a kind of pity. Last Christmas, he handed me a check for $5,000. "Get yourself something nice, Elaine," he said. Or, "Finally take a vacation. You look tired." The money felt like a tip, not a gift. I cashed it and put it right into a savings account. I never spent a cent. The barbecue at Diane's was meant to be a fresh start. I had finally cautiously started seeing someone. David, a high school history teacher with kind eyes and a calm way about him. He was the first man I'd introduced to my family in over a decade. I was nervous, but hopeful. Maybe Brandon would see I was moving on, building a happy life of my own. Maybe he'd even be happy for me. I arrived with David, my hand lightly on his arm. Diane hugged us both, her smile genuine. Her husband Mark gave David a firm handshake. But Brandon, he was standing by the grill holding a pair of tongs like a scepter. He gave David a once-over, a slow nod that wasn't friendly, just assessing. "So you're the famous David?" he said, his voice flat. "Mom's talked a lot. It was a lie. I'd barely mentioned David to him." He turned back to the steak. "Hope you like it medium rare. It's the only civilized way." David just smiled and said, "I'm easy to please," which seemed to disappoint Brandon. Through the afternoon, the little cuts kept coming. I was telling a story about how Brandon at 7 tried to build a rocket from a cardboard box and duct tape. "It was so sweet," I said. Brandon cut in his voice loud enough to carry. "Mom, it was a washing machine box, and it rained. It was a soggy mess. You always romanticize everything." A few people chuckled awkwardly. My face grew warm. Later, I mentioned my plan to finally repaint my kitchen a soft yellow. Brandon snorted. "Waste of money on that old house. You should be saving for a condo, something with equity." David gently said, "I think a yellow kitchen sounds lovely." Brandon just shook his head and walked away as if the conversation was beneath him. The only person who seemed to truly see me was my niece Lily. She's 17, Diane's daughter, with this wise beyond her years quietness. She sidled up to me as I was refilling the lemonade pitcher. "Don't let him get to you, Aunt Elaine," she whispered, her voice low. "He's just showing off for his new girlfriend." She nodded toward a young woman clinging to Brandon's arm, laughing at everything he said. "He's insecure." Coming from a teenager, it was both profound and heartbreaking. She saw the crack in his armor that I, his mother, was too afraid to acknowledge. The sun was high, the smell of charcoal and burgers filled the air. I decided to get a plate. I walked toward the long table laden with food, the sparkling blue pool directly behind me. I heard the quick slap of bare feet on wet concrete. I started to turn, but it was too late. The world exploded in cold and shock. The water wasn't the gentle cool of a planned dip. It was a violent swallowing rush. It invaded my nose, my mouth, my ears. My beautiful linen dress, light as air a moment ago, became a heavy, tangled weight wrapping around my legs like seaweed. My hair plastered itself across my eyes. For a second, there was nothing but the muted, roaring silence of being underwater. Then I broke the surface, gasping, sputtering. I pushed the wet hair from my face, my vision blurred. And I heard it, the laughter. It wasn't a giggle. It was a full, booming roar of amusement. I saw Mark Diane's husband doubled over pointing. I saw Brandon's new girlfriend clapping her hands with glee. The children were shrieking with delight. And then I saw him, Brandon, standing at the pool's edge, his hands on his hips, his head thrown back in the loudest, most triumphant laugh of all. His teeth were very white against his summer tan. "Lighten up, Mom," he bellowed, his voice cutting through the noise. "It's a party. You looked like you needed to cool off your new romance." More laughter erupted. He'd even made air quotes with his fingers. My humiliation was his punchline. David was already at the edge, his hand outstretched, his face a mask of concern and anger. "Elaine, my God, give me your hand." But Brandon stepped in front of him playfully, blocking his path. He slapped David on the back, a buddy-buddy gesture that made my skin crawl. "She's fine, dude. She can take a joke." "Right, Mom? You're not made of sugar, you won't melt." He grinned at me, waiting for me to play along, to laugh it off like I always did. In that moment, shivering in the chlorinated water, something inside me didn't break. It froze solid. This wasn't my successful grown son. This was the ghost of a spoiled little boy still testing boundaries, but now with an audience and a man's strength. The love I felt curdled into something else, a deep quiet and absolute clarity. I didn't take David's hand. I swam the few feet to the steps and walked out of the pool myself. Water streamed from me, forming a puddle on the hot concrete. My dress was ruined, clinging indecently. I didn't try to adjust it. Diane came rushing over with a large striped beach towel, her face a mixture of apology and suppressed mirth. "Brandon." That was too much, she scolded, but her eyes were still crinkled from laughter. I took the towel from her. I didn't wrap it around myself. I held it in my hands, heavy with water. I walked directly toward Brandon, who was still smirking, surrounded by his sycophants. The laughter died down to a few nervous titters. I stopped in front of him. I looked him directly in the eyes, and I saw a flicker of something, uncertainty, finally break through his arrogance. My voice, when it came, was calm. It was low. It was utterly, terrifyingly steady. "That was very funny, Brandon. Hilarious." I didn't say another word. I turned my back on him, on all of them, and walked with deliberate, slow steps toward Diane's back door. I left a trail of wet footprints behind me. Silence followed me. Then I heard Brandon's voice trying to reclaim his territory, but it sounded weak, defensive. "Ah, come on, Mom. Don't be mad. It was just a joke." The door clicked shut behind me, muffling the world outside. Diane's guest bathroom was quiet and cool. I locked the door and leaned against it, my heart finally beginning to hammer against my ribs. I looked at my reflection in the mirror. A drowned, middle-aged woman with mascara smudged under her eyes. But in those eyes, I didn't see hurt anymore. I saw a cold, calculating fire. Diane knocked softly. "Elaine, honey." "I'm so sorry. He's an idiot. Here, I brought you some dry clothes." She passed a pair of cotton capri and a simple t-shirt through the door. "Take your time." I thanked her, my voice still eerily calm even to my own ears. I peeled off the ruined linen dress, a dress I'd saved for a dress that had made me feel pretty. I left it in a sodden heap on the tile floor. As I changed into Diane's clothes, which were a little too short and a little too bright, I wasn't thinking about the embarrassment. I was thinking about power. His power, which was financial and loud and performative, and my power, which was quiet, patient, and born from knowing him better than he knew himself. I sat on the closed lid of the toilet, my fingers trembling not from cold but from a surging energy. I needed to act, not react. Screaming at him would only feed his narrative of me as an emotional, humorless mother. Crying would be a victory for him. No, I had to do something he would never expect, something that would speak a language he understood consequence. A memory surfaced sharp and clear. About 3 months ago, Brandon had come over for dinner. He'd been unusually attentive. Over coffee, he'd slid a folder across my kitchen table. "It's just some extra paperwork for your life insurance policy, Mom," he'd said. "With my being your main beneficiary and all the company needs a few more signatures. It streamlines things, saves you hassle later." He'd smiled his charming smile. "Just trust me. It's for your own good." And I had. Of course I had. He was my son. I'd signed on the highlighted lines without really reading the dense, small print paragraphs above them. I'd been touched by his taking care of me. A sick feeling twisted in my gut. That folder, that trusting signature. I pulled my phone from the small, waterproof pouch in my purse. It was damp, but it worked. My hands were steady now. I opened my mobile banking app. Months ago, Brandon had helped me set up a new high-yield joint savings account. "I'll monitor it. Make sure your money's working for you," he'd said. I'd given him online access for convenience. I'd felt modern, cared for. I logged in. I navigated to the transaction history. I scrolled past grocery stores and utility payments. And then I saw it. A transfer. $22,500, dated 2 weeks prior. The description was vague. External transfer. ACCT management. The receiving institution wasn't my mortgage company. It was something called Nevada Leisure Holdings. A quick internet search on my phone confirmed it. Nevada Leisure Holdings was a corporate shell that owned, among other things, Vegas VIP tours and concierge. The pieces snapped together with an almost audible click. His bragging about the extravagant Vegas trip, the non-refundable suite, the front-row show tickets, the money from the sale of my faithful old Toyota Corolla, a sale he had insisted on handling for me to get the best price. He'd deposited the proceeds into our joint account, and then he'd simply transferred it out to pay for his holiday. He wasn't just disrespectful, he was a thief. A thief who thought his victim was too naive, too grateful to ever check. The cold fire in me blazed into a white-hot purpose. I didn't feel angry. I felt focused. I knew what I had to do. This wasn't about the pool. The pool was just the symptom. This was about the disease. I made 2 phone calls. The first was to my bank's emergency line. With a calm, authoritative voice, I reported suspicious activity on my joint account and placed an immediate full freeze on all transactions. The second call was to an old friend, Sandra, who practiced estate law. I described the document I'd signed. Her silence on the other end was telling. "Elaine," she finally said, her voice grave, "that sounds like a broad financial power of attorney addendum. It doesn't just deal with insurance. It could give him authority over almost all your assets if it's worded a certain way. You need to get that document and send it to me, now." I had a plan. It was ruthless. It was perfect. And it required me to walk back out there and play my part a little while longer. I opened the bathroom door. Diane was hovering in the hallway. "Are you okay?" she asked, her face now full of genuine worry. "I'm fine," I said, and I even managed a small, tight smile. "Just a little damp. Don't let me ruin the fun." I walked back out into the sunlight. The party had resumed, but the mood was subdued, fragile. All eyes flicked to me as I emerged. I ignored them. I went straight to the drink cooler, pulled out a bottle of water, and unscrewed the cap. I took a long, slow drink. Then I walked over to where David stood, looking anxious and out of place. I took his hand. It was warm and solid. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "Don't be," I said, squeezing his hand. "The fun is just beginning." I saw Brandon watching us from across the patio. He was trying to look contrite, but I could see the relief in his shoulders. He thought it was over. He thought I'd absorbed the shock, as always, and was now falling back in line. He gave a little shrug, as if to say, "See, all good." He had no idea. The clock was ticking. The next 45 minutes were a masterclass in quiet tension. The barbecue continued, but the laughter was forced, the conversations hushed. People were stealing glances at me, then at Brandon, trying to read the room. I stayed close to David, my anchor. I made small talk with Diane about her rose bushes. I complimented Mark on the perfectly grilled corn. I was performing normalcy, and I was performing it flawlessly. Brandon, emboldened by what he perceived as my surrender, slowly crept back into his role as the life of the party. He couldn't help himself. He started holding court again, his voice gradually rising. He was holding a bottle of craft beer, gesturing with it. "So yeah, the Vegas trip is finally locked in," he announced to a small group that included his girlfriend and a couple of his cousins. "Booked the Skyview suite at the Apex. Private balcony, hot tub, the works. And I managed to snag tickets to Celestial, you know, that new Cirque show that's impossible to get into. Cost a fortune, but hey, you only live once, right?" His girlfriend squealed and hugged his arm. "I can't wait. It's going to be so Instagrammable." I took a slow sip of my water. David leaned in. "Are you sure you're all right?" he asked. His brow furrowed with concern. He'd seen the cold look in my eye. I turned to him. I didn't lie. "No, David, I'm not okay. What he did wasn't a joke, it was a power move. And in about 20 minutes, he's going to learn what a real consequence feels like. David searched my face. He saw the resolve there, not the hysteria he might have expected. He nodded slowly, a look of profound respect replacing the worry. What do you need me to do? Just stand by me, I said. That's all I need. My niece Lily drifted over a plate of untouched potato salad in her hand. She sat on the patio chair next to mine. That was really lousy, Aunt Elaine, she said quietly. It was, I agreed. But, you know, Lily, sometimes people show you who they are in moments like that, and sometimes you have to show them who you are in response. She played with her fork. I think I know what you mean. My parents, they want me to major in business. They say graphic design isn't practical, that it's a hobby, not a career. Her voice was heavy with a sadness that seemed too old for her. Her words struck a chord. Practical. It was the same word Brandon had used to dismiss my yellow kitchen. It was the weapon people use to enforce their own narrow views of the world. A new layer settled onto my plan. Lily, I said, keeping my voice low, practical is often just another word for what makes me comfortable. Don't let anyone fund their dreams of security by stealing yours. Remember that. She looked at me, her eyes wide, and gave a small, understanding nod. Brandon's voice cut through our conversation again. He was looking right at me, a challenge in his eyes. Yeah, Mom, you should really get out more. See how the other half lives. Vegas would blow your mind. It was another jab, another attempt to belittle my quiet, ordinary life. This time, no one laughed. The air grew thick. Diane shot him a furious look. Brandon, that's enough. He shrugged, but he'd finally crossed a line visible to everyone. The party was dying. People were finishing desserts, looking at their watches. The perfect, silent moment was approaching. I felt a strange calm. The anger was gone, replaced by a crystalline certainty. I looked at the time on my phone. Almost exactly 1 hour since I'd been pushed into the pool. I stood up. I picked up a spoon and gently tapped it against my glass water bottle. The clear ting, ting, ting cut through the murmur of conversation. Everyone, I said, my voice carrying without needing to be loud. If I could have your attention for just a moment. All movement stopped. Every head turned toward me. Brandon paused his beer bottle halfway to his lips, a smirk still playing on his face. He thought I was going to make a sentimental speech to apologize for my mood to smooth things over. He was wrong. The silence was absolute. You could hear the hum of a neighbor's lawnmower in the distance. First, I began my gaze sweeping over the faces of my family. Thank you all for coming today. It's wonderful to be surrounded by family. I let the word hang in the air for a beat. An hour ago, Brandon thought it would be funny to push me into the pool, and I've been thinking about that ever since. I turned my eyes to my son. He shifted his weight, the smirk fading into a look of wary annoyance. Here we go, he muttered, just loud enough for people to hear. Brandon. I continued, my voice still calm, almost conversational. You've always been my pride and joy. I worked very hard so you could have every opportunity. But somewhere along the way, your success started to feel like a weapon you use against me. Your jokes have felt less like humor and more like put-downs. Pushing me in wasn't about fun, it was about humiliation. It was about reminding me and everyone here who holds the power. And it was the final straw. He rolled his eyes. Oh, for God's sake, Mom. It was a prank. Can't you take a joke? You're so sensitive. I'm not finished, I said, and something in my tone made him shut his mouth. A few months ago, you asked me to sign some papers. You said they were for my life insurance to streamline things. As your mother who loves and trusts you, I signed them without question. I saw a flicker of genuine alarm cross his face. It was brief, but I caught it. But after what happened today, I went on, I realized that trust needs to be paired with diligence. So while I was inside, I didn't just dry off. I logged into our joint bank account, the high-yield account you set up to help me manage my money. Brandon's face went pale. You had no right, he hissed, taking a step forward. David instinctively moved slightly closer to my side. I had every right, I stated flatly. It's my account too. And I found a very interesting transaction. A transfer for $22,500, made 2 weeks ago, to a company called Nevada Leisure Holdings. The color drained completely from Brandon's face. His girlfriend looked from him to me, confused. What is she talking about, Brandon? She asked. He ignored her, his eyes locked on mine, blazing with a mixture of panic and fury. That's my money. I put that money in there. I'm managing our assets. Are you? I asked softly. because that $22,500 came from the sale of my Toyota Corolla last month. The sale you handled for me. That was my money from my car. I let that sink in. I saw Diane's hand fly to her mouth. Mark stared at his shoes. And Nevada Leisure Holdings. I continued as the parent company of Vegas VIP Tours, the company you've been bragging about booking your luxury trip with. You weren't just being disrespectful today, Brandon. You were funding your 5-star vacation with the proceeds from selling your mother's car. The gasp from the small crowd was audible. The silence was no longer just quiet. It was stunned, heavy. "You're a liar," Brandon spat, but his voice lacked conviction. It was the desperate cry of a child caught with his hand in the cookie jar. "The paperwork I signed," I said, delivering the final calculated blow, "wasn't for insurance, Brandon. I had a lawyer look at it just now. It was a broad financial power of attorney addendum. You weren't just helping me. You were arranging to take control. You were moving my money to pay for your fun. That's not management. That's theft." "I was going to pay it back," he shouted, his composure shattering. The admission echoed in the silent yard. "Were you?" I asked. "Before or after you enjoyed the private hot tub? But it doesn't matter. I've already taken care of it. First, I've placed a full freeze on that joint account. On Monday, I will be closing it entirely. A new account in my name only is being opened." I took a step toward him. He actually took a step back. "And second," I said, my voice dropping to a deadly calm, "I contacted Vegas VIP Tours. As the owner of the credit card used for the deposit, which was my card, the one you so conveniently manage, I canceled the entire booking. Every suite, every show ticket, every champagne breakfast. The refund, as per their 24-hour cardholder cancellation policy, will be going directly into my new account." Brandon looked like he'd been physically struck. His mouth hung open. His girlfriend let out a small wail. "Our trip? You canceled our trip. You wanted to teach me a lesson about lightening up, Brandon," I said, reclaiming his words from the poolside. "Well, here's my lesson for you. Respect isn't bought with money. It's earned with integrity, and you can't build your fun on someone else's foundation, especially not your mother's." He stared at me, his chest heaving. The entitled prince had just had his crown yanked off and melted down. The utter, complete silence of the family around us was the sound of his reign ending. "You can't do that," he finally screamed, his voice cracking with rage. "That trip is non-refundable. You've ruined everything." I looked at him with a pity that was entirely genuine. "I just did. And you should always read the fine print, Brandon. It's very—" I paused, and my eyes flicked to Lily for a fraction of a second before returning to him. "Practical." With that last word, I turned away. I had said everything that needed to be said. For a long moment, no one moved. The tableau was frozen. Brandon red-faced and trembling with impotent fury, his girlfriend on the verge of tears, the family members looking anywhere but at each other. Then Brandon erupted. He threw his beer bottle. It didn't shatter, but it bounced with a loud, hollow clatter across the patio stones, spraying foam. "This is unbelievable," he roared. He pointed a shaking finger at me. "You humiliated me in front of everyone. You're a spiteful, bitter old woman." David took a protective step forward, but I put a hand on his arm. Brandon didn't deserve another moment of my energy or David's. He stormed across the deck, grabbed his car keys from the table, and shot one last venomous look at the stunned crowd. Happy now, he snarled, though it wasn't clear who he was talking to. Then he was gone. The roar of his expensive sports car engine and the screech of tires announced his departure. The spell broke. The party was irrevocably over. People murmured awkward goodbyes, avoiding eye contact, shuffling off to collect their things. It was a mass exodus of discomfort. Diane was at my side in an instant, wrapping her arms around me. "Oh, Elaine, I had no idea. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry," I laughed. Her voice was thick with tears of shame. Her husband, Mark, approached, his face ashen. "Elaine, I don't know what to say. I'm ashamed of myself." "It's okay, Mark," I said, and I found that I meant it. Their minor complicity in the pool incident paled in comparison to the grand betrayal I had just exposed. They were just followers. Brandon was the architect. Lily came up and hugged me tightly, burying her face in my shoulder. "You were amazing," she whispered. "That was the bravest thing I've ever seen." I held her and looked over her shoulder at her parents. Lily was just telling me she wants to study graphic design, I said to Diane and Mark. Their faces registered surprise. She's incredibly talented. You should ask to see her portfolio sometime. It was a small seed planted in the rubble. Lily squeezed me tighter in thanks. David and I stayed to help Diane clean up. The silence as we cleared plates and dumped ashes from the grill was companionable, not awkward. The work was a grounding, normal thing. I need to apologize too, David said as we stacked plates by the sink. I should have done more when it happened. You offered your hand, I said, and you stood by me when it counted. That was more than enough, more than I've had in a long time. He took my hand then, and the simple warmth of it felt like a promise. That night, back in my own quiet house, the adrenaline finally ebbed, leaving me drained but profoundly peaceful. My phone buzzed on the nightstand, a text from Brandon. You humiliated me in front of everyone. You ruined my trip. I hope you're happy. I read the words. I felt a pang, deep and ancient, the mother pain of a wounded child. But I didn't feel guilt. I had protected myself. For the first time, I had chosen my own dignity over his comfort. I didn't reply. He needed to sit in the silence he had created. I turned off the light and slept a dreamless, solid sleep. The weeks that followed were a period of quiet, deliberate reconstruction. The first thing I did on Monday morning was meet Sandra, my lawyer friend. She confirmed the worst about the power of attorney document. Together, we drafted a formal, notarized revocation of that document and sent it to Brandon and the relevant financial institutions by certified mail. It was a legal wall cold and impersonal. Closing the joint account and moving every last cent of my money into a new one felt like a spiritual cleansing. Brandon did not contact me. The silence stretched thin and brittle. I missed my son, the boy he used to be, with a physical ache. But I did not miss the man he had become. I allowed myself to grieve for that, for the relationship I thought we had, which turned out to be built on shifting sand. I focused on filling my life with things that gave me authentic joy, not just purpose. I signed up for a pottery class at the community center. My first attempts were lopsided and collapsed in the kiln, but the feel of the cool, wet clay in my hands was meditative. It was creation, not reaction. David and I settled into a gentle rhythm. We went for long walks in the state park on Sundays. We cooked simple meals together in my soon-to-be yellow kitchen. He never pushed, never asked about Brandon unless I brought him up. He was simply present. It was a new kind of love, one based on mutual respect, not need or obligation. A month after the barbecue, I received an email. The subject line was blank. It was from Brandon. Mom, I'm not sure what to say. I've been doing a lot of thinking. What I did with the money was wrong. I justified it to myself 100 ways, but it was wrong. I thought I was entitled to it because I was handling things. I see now that I was stealing. The pool thing. I told myself it was a joke, but you were right. It wasn't. I was angry. I was angry that you had David. I was angry that you seemed happy without me being the center of it. It was childish and cruel. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I don't deserve it. I lost my girlfriend over this. She couldn't believe what I'd done. I've been sitting alone in my expensive apartment, and it feels incredibly empty. I miss you. I don't know if we can ever fix this, but I wanted you to know that I heard you. Finally. Brandon. It wasn't a full apology. It was an admission. It was a start. I cried when I read it, hot, silent tears for the glimmer of the sun I raised somewhere inside the stranger he'd become. I wrote back a short, careful reply. Brandon, thank you for your email. I miss you too. Hearing you is the first step. I am open to talking when you are ready. Take your time. Mom, the trust was gone, shattered into a million pieces. Rebuilding it would be the work of years, and it might never be whole again. But something fundamental had shifted. The dynamic of our relationship had been irrevocably altered on that patio. He could no longer assume my compliance. I could no longer assume his goodwill. We would have to build something new from the ground up if we built anything at all. The other day my phone rang. It was Brandon. My heart jumped into my throat. Hi, Mom. Hi, Brandon. A pause, then, so, how's the pottery going? It was a tiny question, a safe, mundane olive branch of a question. But in that moment, it meant everything. It was an acknowledgement of my separate life, my separate interests. It was a request for entry, not a demand. It's going, I said, a smile touching my voice. I made a truly hideous ashtray last week, but the week before, I made a little bowl that actually holds things. He gave a soft chuckle, the first genuine sound I'd heard from him in so long. That's good, Mom. I'm glad. We talked for only 5 minutes about nothing important, but it was a beginning. I learned that the deepest cuts often come from the hands we've held the longest. We pour our love into our children, hoping it will water their character, and we can be shocked when instead it sometimes fertilizes their entitlement. Setting a boundary with someone you love isn't an act of cruelty. It is the most profound act of love you can offer for them and for yourself. It teaches them the weight of their actions. And in the terrible, clarifying silence that follows, it teaches you your own unshakable worth. After a flood, the ground is barren for a time, but if you wait and if you tend to it, you'll eventually see a small green shoot pushing its way toward the sun. It's fragile. It could be trampled, but its very existence is a quiet, stubborn promise that life insists on continuing. And maybe, just maybe, so does love. If you are holding on to a hurt from someone close to you because you're afraid of the storm that speaking your truth might bring, I'm here to tell you this: the storm is already inside you. Letting it out is the only way to find calm, and the silence on the other side. That's not emptiness. That's the sound of your own strength echoing back at you. I would love to hear from you in the comments. Have you ever had to set a difficult boundary with a family member? How did you find the courage? Please share your story. You never know who needs to hear it. If this story resonated with you, please give this video a like. It lets me know these conversations matter. And if you want to join me for more stories about finding peace and power in life's harder lessons, please subscribe and hit the notification bell. Share this with someone who might need a reminder of their own strength today. Thank you for listening, and remember, your dignity is always worth defending. Be kind to yourselves.